I am Daniel Hughes, and welcome to Book 101. Book 101 is all about the books that I read for the last 40 years, and today I have my special guest. She is the author of several books, no other than Miss Sapha Burnell.
And hello, hello, hi, hi, everybody. How are you doing today? I'm Sapha Burnell, the Canadian author of the Uper Super Kings poetry collection, cyberpunk works Neon Lieben and Cagewire, and the mythpunk works Top Shelf and Coco Craze, which are system agnostic TTRPGs, and my newly released mythpunk novel Char and Ash, which is Judge of Mystic Saga Book 1.
Yes, and thank you for your time for our second episode, Miss Burnell.
Woo-hoo. Yes, I'm very happy to be here one more time. Oh, thank you so much for having me back. It was wonderful last time, and I hope everybody goes back and finds the August 7th podcast where we talk about Char and Ash. It was a lot of fun to do, and I'm really proud of it. So,
Yes, so far I got 50 downloads for our episode. Just for 1 week.
hey, here we go.
Yes, thank you so much for supporting this podcast. So last week we talked about chart and ask, can we do the recap?
So, Char and Ash is the first book in my Judge of Mystics saga. And so, the Judge of Mystics saga is a myth punk quartet. There's going to be 4 books, all of which will be published by the end of this year. And it starts us off with the mystic realms keeping a tenuous peace after centuries of war. And forged into the realm's only judge, demigod Caleb Malthison is both peacemaker and executioner of the mystic truce. When Caleb is called to the charred remains of a scorched sacred grove outside Dover, rumors reignite tensions as Ares warns of war's whisper. High Queen Celica is hiding something in the roots and petals of her fey courts, and it smells of rot and ash. Caught between the mystic truce, Ares' demands for answers, and concern for his cursed lover's safety, Caleb descends into a roiling adventure to find the perpetrators before the mystic realms lose faith in him and in peace. Little does he know the perpetrator, Stana, stole something far more precious than belief in gods and heroes.
Wow. Interesting, Charlie and us people. If you are interested how Miss Burnell crafted it, the struggles, please do listen to our episode. So, Miss Burnell, what will be our second book that we're gonna talk about today?
We're talking about book 2, which is Son of Abel. And it includes such wonderful things. I say wonderful in quotation marks there, as Caleb wanting out. Dun dun dun.
Oh.
Caleb wants out of the mystic truce. So I want out. The entire cosmos hiccuped around Finnegan the Fae. Mystic Judge Caleb Malthison desperately clings to the journals of a 7th century Catholic cardinal, obsessed with a magical tattoo that threatens to crumble the mystic realms to wrath and war, a place they know and fear too well. Spiraling with only his scheming ex Delilah to quote unquote help, Caleb searches for the elusive way out of the truce as he descends through the essence of grief into layers of hell on earth. Finnegan breaks his exile to find Caleb's absentee father, Raynar, to wrench Caleb loose before his absence strips the realms of their judge and protector. Before Delilah weaves Caleb into plans of her own, and wrath shatters through the last root of the world tree. Son of Abel is a cathartic, mythpunk and godpunk supernatural fantasy in the second novel in the Judge of Mystics saga.
Wow. Do you think the Son of Abel is more interesting than the first book, Char and
Mm.
Us?
I think Son of Abel is more emotionally charged than Char and Ash. Even I think, it plays off directly from the events of Char and Ash. We start off, bam, a couple of days later. From a new person's perspective, somebody that we met at the end of Char and Ash, but we're starting it in Lou's perspective. And everyone's looking for Caleb. Where has he gone? What has he done? They need to get him. And I'm not going to add a ton of spoilers about Char and Ash because people are still reading the book. But
Yes.
at the end of Char and Ash, something ground shaking for Caleb happens. And he basically goes off. He tries to find a way out. He tries to find a way to get further and further from everything that's going on around him, because that sense of overwhelm and that sense of detached overwhelm that he feels in Char and Ash really comes to the forefront. So we see something incredibly personal from Caleb, even more personal than we saw in Char and Ash. And I focus in on fewer characters as well.
Okay, so Son of Abel, you are republishing it, right?
Yes. So originally, Son of Abel was written around 2012 to 2014 in a literary journal. And it was just supposed to be a piece of serial fiction, a character study on somebody who is, tired of their lot and wants to change, wants to kind of run away from their duties. And by the end of it, there was the opportunity to just turn it into a little novella. And so I said, "Okay, well, let's do this. Let's give it a try." We put the novella out, and it became rapidly apparent that this was a world, not just one single story. And people wanted to know about the world itself. They wanted to know what the Judge of Mystic Realms were like. And so the feedback I was getting from people that read that first edition of Son of Abel was, okay, I really love the characters. I love what you do with Finnegan. I love what you're doing with Caleb. I just want to kind of hug and hold Caleb and make it all better. Meanwhile, Finnegan was hilarious. So they're like, yes, more Finnegan. But it felt incomplete because it was this in medias res, bam, in the middle of everything, starting point. And there was no context for the larger world or for what Caleb's journey in Son of Abel meant for the larger world. So when we saw that was happening, we went, yeah, you know what? Let's pull this off the market. Let's take this back. Let's redo it. Son of Abel is a wonderful story, but it's not book one.
So the Son of Abel, as you're republishing it, did you delete or did you add something to it?
We ended up adding about 35,000 words. So it went from about a 45,000 word novella to now it's resting closer to the edge of 79 to 80,000. So it's a full novel now instead of a novella. We have added a boatload of content. We've edited a couple of things. There were some choices made that we went, let's change this around, especially when I spent the time to kind of discover the world building in a deeper way. And we were developing not only the rest of the saga, all 4 of the quartet books, but we were also developing a few tabletop role-playing games based on the Judge of Mystics world. We were developing an audio series, different things like that, and realized that some of these things that I had put into the story back in 2012 just needed a little modification to basically retcon with the world that we created. So.
Yes, that be interesting, Miss Burnell, Son of Abel. How did you crafted it?
This one I started purely with Caleb's emotional landscape. I started with that journey of a man who is given almost infinite responsibility, and he cannot shoulder it anymore by himself. For me, it was an exploration not only in that sense of what do you do when you're given a duty too young, what do you do when you're given responsibilities you may or may not be ready for, but then also that exploration of allowing men in our society to realize that they can ask for help, that they can reach out, that, their mental and emotional landscape is important. And so maybe it takes somebody writing books like Son of Abel to get people to recognize that, if you need help, you need to ask for it. It's okay to go to your friends and family. It's okay to reconnect, even if you're just a little bit broken. And it was also a way to start Caleb's healing journey off. So, Son of Abel, I mean, it starts with him in a very grief laden, dark place, but it doesn't keep him there. We move through that. This is the valley book, like we were talking about in the last podcast, that, for every valley, I like to bring people back to the mountain. This is the valley of the quartet. This is Caleb at his lowest. And then it's slowly going to start coming up from here. And we start seeing that process of Caleb reconnecting to people and Caleb bonding with people again and Caleb learning some trust and being able to just discern for himself who in his life he can trust and who he can't. And so that was definitely where I started the book off. And then when it came to, the Finnegan scenes and the chapters about Finnegan the Fae, I went, okay, so Caleb's in a pretty, emotionally compromised place. I need some levity in this thing. I need some levity. So let's take Finnegan. He has not left his pub that we see in Char and Ash. Finnegan has not left his pub in almost 200 years. He, the human world has not seen it. He's heard of it. He's seen people walking around with these little devices in their hands, tapping away and doing whatever. He has not seen it for himself. So things get so bad. Finnegan's like, well, all right. If no one else is going to help, I'm going to do it. And he marches himself into the human world, immediately gets shut out from his magic portals, and has to find his way through Vancouver from the Vancouver Aquarium in Stanley Park all the way to the downtown Vancouver Art Gallery by himself, using a bus and learning about Uber.
Mm.
So,
Nice.
walking through Vancouver, learning about what cell phones are, it brought levity to it, but it was also Finnegan being like, well, there's nothing else we can do here. It's time to do something. I guess it's up to me. So
Definitely. So, Son of Abel, what behind the title of your second book of your quartet?
Son of Abel is in direct reference to the journals that we see, which were from the original serialization and which I kept for the book, again, tying into my love of nonlinear storytelling. And from the perspective of the cardinal who wrote them, Cardinal Bricius, two Viking brothers were acting like Cain and Abel. And so you see these two Vikings back in the 7th century. One of them is the Jarl Magni, and the other one is a carpenter named Mutti. And they're battling each other. And Magni wants his brother to be, a true Norseman, to connect to the Norse deities and to take his place as one of the leaders of their village, of their area. And Mutti converts to Christianity. And
Oh, wow.
yeah, it causes a lot of tension, obviously. It also causes a lot of violence to take place within that part of the narrative. And so Son of Abel comes directly from Caleb reading these stories. He's reading this account of Cardinal Bricius, which is of these two Scandinavian brothers. And, the older, stronger warrior and the younger, a little bit more quiet, guy that just wants to build ships, be a carpenter, farm a little bit, kind of, he's not as much of the warrior as his brother. And by the end of it, just what happens with those two brothers ends up connecting Caleb back to his own family and his own family story, and why his father disconnected him from the rest of their family, which includes Caleb's grandfather, Thor. So I'm very much connecting to that figure of Abel with this figure of Raynar, Caleb's dad, but also with these journals that Caleb is reading to try and find his way.
Wow, interesting, Ms. Burnell. But before we go on, I want to shout out to the people listening in Sweden. Thank you, Sweden, for supporting this top podcast in Stockholm County. I got 40% audience share. Stockholm at 20%, Jönköping at 14%, Västra Gotland County at 9%, Uppsala at 6%, Dalarna County at 3%, Västra Gotland at 3%, Skane County at 3%, and last but not the least, Skane at 3%. Thank you, Sweden, for supporting this podcast because this podcast is created to empower writers all over the world, like Miss Sapha Burnell. Burnell, son of Abel, what is the best highlight?
Ooh, the best highlight, if you like comedy, the best highlight is Finnegan the Fae trying to figure out what the F he's going to do when he gets locked out of his doors and thus is stuck in Vancouver with no magic.
Yes.
This includes a scene of him running down from the Vancouver Aquarium to, if you're from Vancouver and you've been to that area, you know, in Stanley Park, there's this little garden area that goes down to basically an artist's row where a lot of artists would kind of, you know, show their paintings and things, and you could purchase paintings. Well, he finds this kid sitting there beside a violin, and with permission, he asks to borrow it. And he busks his way into some pocket change playing, you know, songs on this violin, and then uses that money to go to a claw machine and using just a little bit of luck, actually winning the one iPhone, well, okay, cell phone that's in the claw machine.
Wow. And then after that,
And then he
there's no spoiler alert.
yeah,
Spoiler
spoiler
alert,
alert.
people.
Spoiler alert for Finnegan. He, of course, being Finnegan, meets this lovely lady who's out there walking with her infant son in his stroller, who charges up his phone, teaches him how to use it a little bit, leaves her number in the phone, wink, wink, and he continues trying to find his way to Raynar, Caleb's dad. He's trying to call Raynar. He's trying to figure things out. He looks at his phone and he asks, like, just a question. He's like, "Oh, where am I going to find ravens in Vancouver?" And the phone answers him back because he accidentally pressed the button for Siri. So freaks him out,
Okay.
but he learns more about the world. And so for me, I think a highlight from the comedy side of it is just that comedy of lucky errors that happen to Finnegan as he's trying to find his way. I think for me, the tension based kind of dramatic part that I love the most of Son of Abel is nearer to the end, where Caleb finally finds what he's looking for. His ex Delilah helps him, you know, quote unquote helps because it's Delilah, as you'll find out. Um, insert antagonist here. He finds his way, he finds what he was looking for. And then he stares at that decision in the face and goes, I can't live in your world. I cannot live in a world where the only way out is to do despicable things. And he basically comes to the realization that what he needed wasn't a way out of the truce, it was to reconnect to it. And, that, of course, being me, ensues in this gigantic fists up, you know, guns a-blazing battle scene. I do love my pugilism, my combat in my books as well, and so it ends in this big scene. There's a lot of different things that happen, which are totally spoilers that set up the action for the next 2 books, and, it's close to the end, it's close to the climax of Son of Abel, and I love that scene. It's something that I've had to rewrite a couple of times just through the process of writing Son of Abel, but I'm very happy with how it's now turning out, and with Caleb coming to the realization that he needs to come to with explosive and kinetic
So, see, Son of Abel is one of Miss Burnell, Son of Abel. What are your preparation in writing it?
Ooh, what's the preparations for writing Son of Abel? I took a very solid look, especially when we were approaching the rewrites. When we were first approaching the initial writing, it was something quite different. It was that here's the amount of words you have per issue. This is how many issues we want the story to go. Go forth, write this thing. Okay, thank you very much. When we came to the rewrites, I started off by, again, for me, my process, I use ClickUp when it comes to my pre-production. And so I used ClickUp to kind of layer in the scenes, what scenes that I wanted to tell, where I was going to put all of them, especially being nonlinear. I was definitely being very careful of making sure that every time I put in one of the journal entries from Cardinal Bricius, that it fit narratively with the emotions going on with the story that's happening in 2017. I also made sure that the emotional arc could both attach to Char and Ash, that it felt like a continuation of Char and Ash, and yet still swept up towards the next book, which is Book of Revels. And so I definitely wanted to make sure that that connectivity was still there. I also just had to figure out timelines of where every character was.
Let's talk about the main character of Son of Abel.
Caleb. My dear, poor, tired protagonist, Caleb Malthison. He is the grandson of Thor. And as you find out, there's a lot of tension in the Asgardian pantheon. There's a lot of tension in that family. And Caleb has basically no connection to them. It is not something that they desire. Obviously, Thor and the other Asgardian gods, they want to connect to Caleb, but just because of some of those things that happened with the truce and with the Mystic War, and basically because of Caleb's father and what Raynar went through, he's never been able to attach. He's never been somebody who's wanted to attach because he's always known it was almost forbidden. He knew that it would cause his father pain. He knew that his father warned him against it. He knew that the family drama which took place in order for even the Mystic War itself to begin happened partially because of his dad and the family. And so Caleb is always kept very separate. And this is his start of healing and reconnecting. So he's tired. He's a little bit heart wounded, from the end of Char and Ash, and he's done. He wants out. He doesn't want to do what he's doing anymore. He doesn't want to be the judge. He doesn't want the responsibility of all these different mystic realms on his shoulders. He can't handle it anymore. And so he's looking for ways out. Instead of just opening up and telling the people around him that he needs a break, he's trying to get away from as many of them as possible. And he learns as he goes that's not the right way to go. And he does start connecting, which is what changes his fate later on. I love Caleb. He is this mixture of emotional intensity, of physical power, but also of great vulnerability. I love showing male characters who are both powerful and vulnerable. And the more we see Caleb, the more we're going to see this very non-toxic idea of manhood, of this strong man that can take on the responsibilities he needs to take on to, but also understands when it's time to shelve those responsibilities and let somebody else lead the way.
So, how powerful Caleb is?
Well, there's a couple of spoilers in Char and Ash that indicate a few things. Uh, so, what I'll say is in Son of Abel, Caleb is quite shocked by the powers that he displayed at the end of Char and Ash, and is attempting to reevaluate himself when he thought he was just a little bit stronger, a little bit faster. He thought he was a little bit more resilient than a baseline human, and finds out in actual fact, nuh-uh. You got some power, son. Let's go. So he's very much learning this power in Son of Abel, and it's one of the things that scares him. Thinking, he's 163 years old by the time we get to Son of Abel. And so he has that longer lifespan and things like that of a demigod. Uh, but he's always thought that he just had this small little sliver of just enough to keep him relevant when it comes to the realms. And when he discovers that nobody, you're a little bit stronger than that. You need to, can you maybe, not not explode half the world, please. It freaks him out. He's like, ah! He's like, oh, no. And it's one of the reasons he's like, nope, I've got to get out of here because I don't understand this power. And if I don't understand this power, I can hurt the ones that I care about. And so he's part of this reason he's running is because he realizes how much, like, he's starting to realize how much more powerful he actually is. And it scares him.
Yes.
So
That's how powerful he is, and it's up to you to discover.
at the end of Char and
Definitely.
Ash, you'll see.
Oh, yes. Before we go on, Miss Burnell, I want to invite you to listen to my upcoming episode with Mr. John Petrelli. We talk about his latest book, Confession with a Hollywood Trainer. This is interesting book that I want to feature this month. And please do listen to it because that move you and give you inspiration to live. So, Miss Burnell, let's talk about your upcoming books because more books to come for sure.
Yes.
So after Son of Abel, what will be the third book of your quartet?
Book of Revels, which is coming out at the end of September. So Book of Revels, and then Ginnan Gagap is book 4. Book of Revels takes us on a little bit of a turn. By the end of Son of Abel, we see, Caleb and Delilah have their moment. And at the end, I will say, spoiler, of Son of Abel, Delilah gets a little bit angry at something that Caleb pulls when he's leaving her where she wants to be left. She decides to stay in a certain area, and Caleb's like, well, I'm out. See you later. And so she texts and calls him basically and says, because you did this, that's it. You have to do it. And he's like, do what? And he's like, you have to pick up my daughter from boarding school. The little insert word here, she got expelled for bad behavior. Just take her on one of your little adventures, take her home, whatever. I don't care. Just pick her up and, set her straight. And Caleb's like, what? 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 Because he's always been separated from Delilah's daughter. Delilah has always kept Lilith very far away from Caleb for reasons that we find out in Book of Revels are quite important. And so in Book of Revels, we started off with Caleb thinking he's going to pick up this like 8 or 9-year-old girl and take her back to Vancouver so she can go into the care of her nanny, that her mother has hired, and instead finds an angry 13-year-old who has ties to Stana, the villain of Char and Ash. And insert this massive adventure where Caleb and Lilith end up not only discovering the truth that Delilah has hidden from them for 13 years, but also it's high time Stana got her dues and Lilith is the key. So we get to see a little bit more comedy kind of brought in there as well. We get introduced to this character of Lilith, and she ends up becoming a very strong and important character for the rest of the series. And this is really the connection point of where Caleb's life starts turning towards the mountaintop. And so it's difficult, it's hard, there's lots of tension, but then we also have a golden moment thinking because Caleb was the one to come pick her up, her mother must have decided that she was so bad and so terrible of a teenager that it was time for her to be sent to hell. Meaning Caleb gets this girl and she immediately starts freaking out with, you're the judge, the oh holy banhammer. Why did she send you? Thinking that she's about to get nuked out of existence. And Caleb's just standing there going, no, not happening. And just walks away. He's like, no, I can't deal with this. I cannot deal with a teenage girl. Like, somebody help me here. But we do end up finding out that Caleb and Lilith have a very strong connection. And for those of you on my World Anvil site and who have played Coco Craze and Top Shelf, which are the games based in the Judge of Mystics world, you'll know that it does turn out that Caleb and Lilith are actually father and daughter, and that was this massive secret that Delilah kept from them for her own reasons. And so we get to start this daddy daughter adventure, which ends up just connecting them and building that sense of family while they're also, trying to defeat Stana. And we see some familiar faces from Char and Ash. We get to see Ares and Aphrodite again. We get to see Icarus and Lou and connect up those stories. So all of the distance that we had in Son of Abel starts to reduce and then disappear once we get to Book of Revels, which I find is a lot of fun. I really
Yes,
enjoyed writing that one. Um,
definitely. And if you publish this book, can you please come back and promote this book again?
Absolutely. So Book of Revels, it's if you go to saphaburnell.com, that is SAPHABURNELL.com, you'll see in events that I do have my publication schedule. It is live. So Book of Revels is coming out Tuesday, October 3rd. Meanwhile, Gagap, the last of the quartet, is coming out Thursday, November 30th. So all of those books are scheduled. You can be part of the live launch. We are doing it on Twitch. My Twitch is Usurper Kings, just like all my social media, and we can celebrate live. I'm going to be reading from the book. We're going to be having some fun, doing some Q&As and things like that live all over, just to make sure
Yes.
that everybody, as much as possible, no matter where you are in the world, can celebrate this beautiful Mythpunk series that I have had a fantastic time in writing and developing. I am so proud of it. It's a lot of fun.
Definitely. So, are you the writer that you give highlights the villain first and the hero?
For the entire series, I have two main villains. And character-wise, there is Cormac of the Willow and Stana, the keeper of the Book of Knowledge. And so while Son of Abel has the least amount of focus on those two villains, they're just sort of in the background. Things have happened, so Cormac is kind of on ice for a little bit before the end of Book of Revels, so he's not going to come back really until Gin Gagap, but he's mentioned and you can kind of see the machinations in the background. Stana is someone who's mentioned but not seen in Son of Abel, but she is incredibly important. And we get to sort of morph from that because Son of Abel had so much just gravitas already from Caleb going through what he was going through. The antagonist of Son of Abel really is grief. And so instead of it being a character that's pushing Caleb in a certain way or in a negative sense, it is his grief that is pushing him into things that he then gets himself out of as we go. But I love to take the idea of what am I going to put my main character through? What are his emotional notes? What are his mental notes? What is going to change psychologically and also just physically from book 1 to book 4? Okay, how can my antagonists reflect those things? And so where Caleb is meant to be this judge, he's meant to be this peacemaker. He's meant to be this person that goes around and not only ensures that all of the different mystic folks are cohabitating properly, but also maintaining a sense of safety for the human race, who are the only people who have a connection to all of the realms together instead of just, one or two. And so he's protecting the humans, but at the same time, he's, trying to make sure that he keeps the peace for everybody else. So if that is Caleb's mission and that is Caleb's focus, then Stana needed to be somebody who had just as much, if not more, access to knowledge and yet uses it for completely different means. She doesn't want the realms to be happy. She doesn't want the realms to stay separate and kind to each other. She wants to tear all of that down. She wants to disconnect humanity from all of these mystic realms, from all this magic and divinity and all of these gods. Stana is this figure who takes that knowledge and then uses it against people instead of learning something and using it for people. And so it was very important to have that reflection when Caleb's looking at her and when Caleb's looking at these situations, and for him to be able to go, that's not who I want to be.
Very well said, Miss Burnell. But before we go on, I'm inviting you to listen to my other podcast, Geography 101. People, it's all about the places that I visited from Europe, North America, South America, Asia, and a lot more. So please do listen, Geography 101. So, Miss Burnell, can you please invite our listeners to buy all your books?
Everyone, thank you so much for listening to Book 101 and the other podcasts that Daniel Lucas has, including Food 101 and Geography 101. Thank you so much for being here and for supporting the arts. You can find my books either at saphaburnell.com. You can also go to books2read.com/Char and Ash, or just search for my name, Sapha Burnell, in your favorite bookstore of choice. I do have buy links in my website that will take you directly to places like the Vreda Media Store, or to Barnes and Nobles, Saxo, Waterstones, Foyles in the UK, and then also places like Chapters Indigo. My books are available anywhere, including Amazon. They are also available there for Kindle store and for paperback. I'm just doing paperbacks for the Judge of Mystic Saga until the end, and then we're going to do a special edition hardcover at the end with all 4 books in one. So I encourage you, please take a look. Please purchase the books. They really help somebody out that is an indie author like me, somebody that's going with the small press route of things. It absolutely helps maintain that thing called life.
Yes, definitely. People, I'm begging you to support indie authors because they're one of a kind. They produce something else. So if you support them, more books to come.
If you like that mixture of drama and humor, if you like something that's very emotionally based, cathartic, also a little bit of combat, but then also some of those breaths of something funny that's going to kind of take down the edge a little bit, you will quite enjoy my books. I believe that is the intention of them. Just kind of relax and have some fun, and to go through some mountain ranges.
Yes, definitely. So, Ms. Berna, can you explain to us this quotation? Sapha is like a young Wolfgang Pauli. In every laboratory he went, there was a little explosion, according to David Rooming.
So years ago, I was involved. Well, I still am a member of the Writers Union of Canada. I have been since 2014. And I got to meet David Rumi, who is a brilliant philosopher and poet, and somebody who has a lot of time spent being a mental health professional in academic and in therapeutic fields. And we connected over poetry and over, some old plays and different things like that. And one day he just went, "Oh, Sapha? Well, Sapha is like a young Wolfgang Pauli. In every laboratory he went, there was a little explosion because I was so energetic." And like, bam. And you read my books, and there's these little explosions everywhere. And it's this, it was that kind of sense of, oh, well, Sapha's in the room. You can tell because I can see the purple hair. I can hear the voice. I can, I make my presence known. Uh, so I love the quote so much because it both tied in, some scientific sensations that I really enjoy reading. I love reading about Wolfgang Pauli and about the early discoverers of quantum mechanics, and just I love reading books on physics. I really do. It might sound strange for somebody who's loving myth punk and mythology and folklore, but I also do love science fiction. That is my main genre with my Lebenscycle series. And so reading about Wolfgang Pauli and about their work with Jung and their work with kind of metaphysics and things like that as well. And then it's this pop of explosive events in my fiction.
Wow. Yes, indeed. So, Ms. Burnell, if you compare Norse mythology and Greek mythology, what is the big difference?
I think, in my opinion, the big difference between Norse mythology and Greek mythology, well, for one, you could theorize a lot. They come from the same Indo-European root. So you can see that kind of call backwards to some originating stories that are retold in different ways. I think we have to consider the locations that these stories grew up in. When we're looking at the Germanic and when we're looking into the Germanic, then going into the Scandinavian myths, hell is this place of cold. Helheim is this cold location. It's where else in the world would you have a mythology where it's not, we have a lot of, hell is hot and, you have Tartarus and you have the fires of Tartarus and you have all these different things. And that's where a lot of the sort of kind of Christian mythology of hell can come from. It can come from some of these myths of the underworld and different things like that are not necessarily, in the scriptures there. But in Scandinavian mythology, it's all cold. I think also with Scandinavian mythology, there is that sense of the Utengard and the Innengard. So the Utengard is that outside place. It's outside your walls. Uten, outside, kind of guard, the walls. And outside your walls, your encampment's walls, it's chaos and anarchy. And that's the land of giants. And, all of these things can happen and it's dangerous. And there's just shadows lurking in the dark. But then the Innengard inside your walls is where society is. It's where order is. It's where coming together and being community is. And so that sense of where community lies within this sort of hoop area, within this sort of wall area, and everything else is kind of chaotic, I think is a very different mental exercise from the rigid power structure that you see in Greek mythology. You have figures like Zeus usurping his father, who usurped his father, who took power from, you have this king and then the king's family of gods underneath him. And then you have, all these human creatures underneath, and you have so much more stratification of culture. You also have a huge distinction between males and females. That gender binary in Greek mythology is absolutely part of the whole in a way that's not necessarily the same in Norse mythology, when you have characters like, Loki, who is a shapeshifter and shapeshifting into female and male beings. And then you have, Thor. Oh no, Mjolnir is missing. Mjolnir was stolen. He has to get his hammer back. How's he going to do that? By dressing up like a bride and pretending to marry a giant. There's definitely more of that kind of play of different kind of social aspects when you look at Norse mythology in comparison to when you're looking at Greek mythology. It tends to be a little bit more stable in that regard until you get to characters like Hermaphrodite. And the power structure is just different. You think Odin, the king of the gods and things like that, but who actually ran Asgard? A lot of people think that somebody like Tyr was actually the person who kind of did the everyday logistics of ruling Asgard, while Odin was off on his adventures, attempting to discover different kinds of wisdom and magic. Whereas you do not make a mistake, Zeus is in charge. If you do not believe that, you are about to be thunderbolted out of existence, or everything about you is going to end up sucking in some way, shape, or form. So there's those differences as well.
Again, Miss Burnell, thank you so much for your time.
And thank you for your time. Thank you so much for having me on this wonderful platform. I appreciate it a lot.
Yes, once again, support Miss Burnell, because if you support her, more books to come. Bodycon people, see you soon.